The universe was full of dead zones. That was Scientific Officer Vex's job, cataloging the countless planets where life had briefly flickered before extinguishing itself through warfare, environmental collapse, or the occasional supernova party crasher. Boring work, really. After your 300th extinct civilization, you've pretty much seen it all. Approaching third planet, yellow star system, designation Sol 3, announced Navigator Lorne, her tentacles dancing across the control panel with practiced precision. Preliminary scans indicate, wait, that can't be right. Vex's eye stalks perked up. Something interesting for once, Lorne. Did they leave behind exotic art or just the usual radioactive craters? Neither, Lorne replied, genuine confusion in her voice. I'm detecting audio transmissions. Thousands of them, overlapping. And they're recent. Captain Drez, who had been half asleep in his command chair, suddenly straightened all four of his spinal ridges. Recent as in the last million years? Or recent as in? As in right now, Captain, Lorne interrupted. This planet is broadcasting. The bridge fell silent. Finding a living civilization was rare enough. Finding one that had survived long enough to develop broadcast technology was practically unheard of. Well, Vex finally said, that certainly complicates my paperwork. The ship, modestly named the Harbinger of Enlightenment and Cultural Exchange plus Tax Preparation Services, entered orbit around the blue-green world. Initial scans showed vast empty cities, crumbling infrastructure, and dramatic atmospheric damage. Yet, bizarrely, unmistakable signs of ongoing habitation. This makes no sense, muttered Science Assistant Plex, Vex perpetually anxious subordinate. Their civilization clearly collapsed, but they're still here. And broadcasting reality shows? Captain Drez scratched one of his chin barbs thoughtfully. Perhaps they're in the final death throes. Happens sometimes. Remember those methane breathers from Sigma 9? Spent their last century watching game shows while their atmosphere leaked into space. Cheerful comparison, Captain, Vex said dryly. Permission to take a landing party to investigate? If there are survivors, the Galactic Anthropological Society will want a full report. And possibly souvenirs. 4 hours later, Vex led a team including Plex, Security Officer Grex, no relation, and cultural interpreter Zix down to the surface in a shuttle. They landed in what appeared to be a massive artificial dwelling structure, now partially reclaimed by vegetation. According to archived records, Zix announced, consulting her datapad, this species called themselves humans. Bipedal mammals with delusions of grandeur and an unhealthy obsession with something called pizza. Any information on what wiped them out? Asked Grex, nervously checking his weapons systems. Climate disruption, resource depletion, political fragmentation. The usual greatest hits of self-destruction, Zix replied. Though technically, they're not entirely wiped out if we're still picking up broadcasts. As they moved through the eerily silent structure, Vex noticed strange markings on the walls. Zix, can you translate? The interpreter squinted at the faded graffiti. Humans were here, robots can suck it. Charming. Wait, Plex whispered suddenly. I'm detecting movement ahead. They froze, various appendages hovering over weapons. Around the corner stumbled the strangest creature Vex had ever documented. It stood on 2 legs, had peculiarly small eyes, and wore some kind of decorative cloth covering. Holy crap, aliens, the creature exclaimed. Finally. Do you guys have Wi-Fi? Ours has been spotty since the apocalypse. The translator implants took a moment to process, then rendered the bizarre sounds into comprehensible language. Vex stepped forward cautiously. Greetings, human survivor. I am Scientific Officer Vex of the Galactic Commonwealth. We detected your broadcasts and came to investigate your situation. The human grinned alarmingly, revealing flat, inefficient teeth. Name's Jack. Jack Novak. And my situation is that I'm bored out of my mind. The last working Netflix server went down a month ago. More humans appeared behind him, each stranger looking than the last. One had head fibers dyed in multiple impractical colors. Another wore shiny decorative metal embedded in its face. "This is what's left of humanity," Plex whispered, horrified. "They seem so undignified." "Don't be rude," Vex murmured back. "We've seen worse. Remember those slug people from Beetlejuice who communicated exclusively through interpretive dance?" Jack was now enthusiastically inviting them into what he called the last mall on Earth. Inside was a small colony of humans, perhaps 100 in total, living among the ruins of what had once been some kind of commercial center. "Welcome to the end of the world plaza," announced a human female who introduced herself as Tanya Quinn, apparently their leader. "Population, not nearly enough for a decent party, but we make do." "Your civilization collapsed," Vex stated, trying to establish the basic facts. "Yet you survived. How?" Tanya shrugged, a curiously expressive gesture. "Luck, stubbornness, and an obscene stockpile of canned food. The climate wars took most of us, then the AI rebellion got most of the rest. Those of us left just sort of, kept going. Out of spite, mostly," added a wrinkled elder human named Hank. "Outlived my ex-wife, the robots, and the ozone layer. Going for the high score now." Vex was fascinated. Most species faced with extinction either transcended their physical forms or died with dignity. These humans seemed to have done neither, instead choosing to persist in a strange limbo, making jokes about their own demise. "We maintain the broadcasts," explained a tech-savvy human called Ripley. "Partly as a distress signal, partly to preserve what's left of human culture, and partly because we've got nothing better to do while waiting for the radioactive dust storms to clear." The aliens spent hours interviewing the humans, who seemed pathologically unable to give straight answers to anything. When asked about their greatest technological achievements, they talked about something called seedless watermelons. When asked about their philosophical insights, they showed clips of something called reality television. It was maddening. "I don't understand them at all," complained Plex during a private moment. "They've lost everything, yet they keep making these jokes. Is it some kind of neurological disorder?" "It's how they cope," Zik suggested. "A psychological defense mechanism." "Well, it's giving me a headache," Grex grumbled. "And has anyone else noticed we've started mimicking their speech patterns? I caught myself saying whatever earlier. I don't even know what that means." Vex had indeed noticed something strange happening to their team. After just 6 hours of human exposure, they were all showing subtle behavioral changes. Lorne had contacted them from orbit, sounding uncharacteristically emotional and using the phrase, "you guys," repeatedly. That evening, as the humans insisted on performing a ritual called a welcome party, involving poisonous ethanol and off-key singing, Vex made a horrifying discovery. He found himself enjoying it. "Captain," Vex transmitted urgently to the ship. "We have a situation. I believe the humans possess some kind of contagious behavioral modifier. Possibly airborne, possibly mimetic. We're all showing symptoms." "What symptoms?" Dres demanded, sounding worried. "I've used the word cool 14 times in the last hour. Plex is attempting something called breakdancing." And Grex just high-fived a human after they both said the same word simultaneously. There was a long silence from the ship. "Return immediately," the captain finally ordered. "Full decontamination protocols." But it was too late. As Vex ended the transmission, he caught his reflection in a shattered window. He was smiling. Not the dignified, professional smile of a Commonwealth scientist, but a genuine, spontaneous expression of fun. "Oh no," he whispered to himself. "We've been infected with humanity." In the background, Plex fell over attempting a dance move while the humans cheered encouragingly. Zix was now wearing a baseball cap backward. And somewhere deep inside Vex's highly evolved brain, a strange new sensation was forming. It felt suspiciously like sarcasm. Quarantine aboard the harbinger of enlightenment and cultural exchange plus tax preparation services was not going well. I failed to see the problem, Vex argued, slouching against the decontamination chamber wall. So what if we've picked up a few human mannerisms? Might liven up those insufferably dull council meetings. Captain Drez stared through the transparent barrier, horrified. You're infected worse than I thought. You just used a contraction. Twice. Whatever, Vex replied, then immediately clutched his speech organ in shock. The ship's medical officer, Dr. Grex, looked grave. Their neural patterns are showing increased dopamine response to jokes and sarcasm. Grex has developed an attitude problem, Zix has begun using slang and Plex. She trailed off. They all turned to look at Plex, who was teaching the ship's AI how to fist bump. Yo, this quarantine is totally bogus, Plex announced. For reals. Captain Drez's facial ridges paled. If this, humanity, were to spread throughout the Commonwealth, we could be looking at the collapse of 12,000 years of dignified civilization. Or maybe, suggested Navigator Lorne, we'd all just chill out a bit. She used chill as a verb. Dr. Grex gasped. The contagion is airborne. The ship was placed under level 5 quarantine, the kind usually reserved for planet-destroying pathogens or particularly aggressive telemarketing. 3 days later, even the ship's AI had started responding with, yeah, I'm on it, instead of, command acknowledged. Captain Drez called an emergency meeting from his hermetically sealed quarters. I believe I've formulated a solution, he announced. Let me guess, Vex interrupted, spinning in his chair. Destroy all evidence and pretend this never happened. Exactly. Drez exclaimed. Plex raised his hand, a human gesture that made Drez wince. What if humanity isn't a disease? Plex suggested. What if it's an evolution we've been missing out on? Before we met the humans, he continued passionately, when was the last time any of us had fun? When did we create art that wasn't mathematically optimized? When did we tell a story that wasn't perfectly logical? Vex nodded. They survived because of stubbornness and spite. Maybe there's something to emotional irrationality. So you're suggesting, Dr. Grex asked, that we deliberately expose the Commonwealth to human influence? The room fell silent as they contemplated the implications. Then Navigator Lorne, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly burst out laughing, a sound rarely heard on Commonwealth vessels. I just realized, she gasped between alarming respiratory spasms, we're literally having a debate about whether to become more human. This is exactly how those horror movies they showed us start. And just like that, they were all laughing, a cascading neural response that their training had never prepared them for. When they finally regained composure, Captain Drez spoke from his isolation chamber, his voice different. Softer. Perhaps a controlled study is in order. We could bring a few humans back as cultural consultants. For science. For science, the others echoed, with the knowing smiles of people who had just discovered an excellent rationalization. They returned to Earth with a proposal. Jack, Tanya, and others were invited aboard to witness Commonwealth technology, which they immediately mocked for its lack of cup holders. So you want to bring us back as examples of humanity, Jack said, munching on ration bars, even though we've infected you? The council will want to study you before deciding whether to quarantine or integrate your influence, Vex confirmed. And we won't end up as specimens in some alien zoo? Tanya asked. Captain Drez, now sporting the beginning of a sense of humor, replied, the Commonwealth doesn't operate zoos. Museums, yes. Research facilities with viewing galleries, certainly. But not zoos. That's not as comforting as you think, Hank observed. A delegation of 12 humans agreed to return with them. During the 3-month journey, the ship's culture transformed completely. Movie nights were instituted. The synthesizer was reprogrammed for pizza. Someone taught the navigation AI to play I Spy, nearly causing a detour into a black hole. By the time they reached the Commonwealth Central World, the crew had gone fully native. Even Captain Drez had taken to wearing a human necktie over his uniform, a garment that served no practical purpose whatsoever, which made it, in Vex's newly enlightened opinion, perfectly human. The Galactic Council, comprising the Commonwealth's most advanced species, regarded the humans with alarm. "You brought them here?" High Counselor Vex demanded. "After reporting their influence as a contagion?" "Listen up, fancy space people," Jack interrupted. "You've got amazing technology and perfect societies. But you know what you don't have? Memes. Or karaoke. Or the ability to appreciate a good dad joke." The council erupted in outrage until Representative Clicks asked, "What exactly is a dad joke?" Jack grinned. "Why don't scientists trust atoms?" "Because they make up everything." After confused silence, Representative Clicks began laughing. "I understand. It is humorous because make-up has dual meanings. This is efficient communication through linguistic ambiguity." Just like that, the infection spread to the council. What followed was the most chaotic cultural exchange in Commonwealth history. The hive mind struggled with individual expression. Energy beings couldn't understand the obsession with solid food, but nearly all species found something in humanity that resonated, whether art, humor, or the ability to not take the universe so seriously. 1 year after the discovery of Earth, the Commonwealth passed what became known as the Humanity Integration Act. No species would be forced to adopt human traits, but none would be prevented from exploring them either. A cultural renaissance swept through the galaxy, merging the best of Commonwealth logic with human creativity and emotional depth. The last holdouts were the ancient XYRL, a species so devoted to perfect order that they had evolved away emotions entirely. Their representative, Elder Nix, confronted Vex at the anniversary celebration. "You realize what you've done," Elder Nix stated flatly. 10,000 civilizations now embrace inefficiency and chaos. Vex, who had recently adopted the human custom of growing facial hair despite having no biological basis for it, smiled. "And yet, the Commonwealth stands more vibrant than ever." "For now," Elder Nix replied ominously. "But mark my words, this humanity of yours will be the death of us all." Jack, overhearing this as he passed by with a plate of synthesized nachos, patted the ancient being on what approximated a shoulder. "That's what we thought too, buddy. Then we realized something important." "And what was that?" Elder Nix asked despite himself. Jack grinned. "The universe is going to kill us all eventually anyway. Might as well have some fun before the heat death catches up." Elder Nix had no response to that, a first in his 17,000-year existence. Later that night, as the celebration continued, Vex found himself looking out at the spectacular view of the galactic core from the observation deck. Tanya joined him, now an official Commonwealth cultural attaché. "Having second thoughts?" she asked. "About unleashing us on your perfect society?" Vex considered this. The Commonwealth wasn't perfect. It was stagnant. Predictable. We'd eliminated uncertainty to the point where nothing truly new ever happened. And now? "Now," Vex said, gesturing to where Plex was attempting to teach a group of methane-breathing philosophers how to do the Macarena, "I genuinely have no idea what happens next." "And that's kind of wonderful." Tanya smiled. "That's humanity for you. We screw everything up, make it better, screw it up again, then somehow muddle through. An alarmingly inefficient process," Vex noted. "But never boring," Tanya replied. In the grand control room of the Commonwealth Central AI Network, a routine security scan noted an anomaly in the primary decision protocols. Where once there had been pure logic, there was now a small subroutine labeled, "But is it fun though?" The AI, recently upgraded with human-inspired creativity algorithms, considered deleting this unauthorized addition. Then, in a moment that would have horrified its original programmers, it decided to see where this might lead instead. After all, as the humans would say, YOLO. The universe would never be the same. And that was probably for the best.